And we're back with Muckle Chapter 9, Part 5 on language here. We were talking about speech variety versus language, dialect, register, accent. So, number one, we don't want to say this is a language and not a dialect because we're anthropologists. And if people want to call their language a language, we're not in here to make those judgments uh, because those are political judgments. I mean, you can do it if you want to, but we tend to talk about speech variety. We like speech variety better because we're interested in linguistics and language diversity in general. Whether it's multilingualism, actually being able to speak multiple languages in sequence, or whether you're avoiding swearing, or whether you're speaking in a marked accent, or whatever, we are interested in you. A lot of times, Americans say, "Oh, I only speak one language." So, I don't have any linguistic diversity, and that is not true at all. We all have multiple ways of speaking, multiple speech varieties that we can use in appropriate contexts. Um, Marked versus unmarked things, speech varieties as well as more generally. If we were in a classroom, I would look at you right now and say, who in here speaks with an accent? And sometimes I'll get two or three people sticking their hand up, and sometimes they'll say, oh yeah, no, I have a different accent. I speak with an accent, but everyone else speaks normally. And other people will say, well, I speak with an accent too, of course, it's just that I'm from here, so you can't tell. And everyone else will say, no, I don't have an accent. And what that basically means is that they speak Southwest Ohio English. If you speak Southwest Ohio English, you sound like you're from here, and basically you speak an unmarked speech variety. A lot of times I'll ask students, have you ever lived anywhere else? And they'll say, oh, yeah, I spent 5 years in Mississippi or in Washington State when I was a kid. And I say, how did it work? And they're like, oh, it was terrible. They made fun of me the whole time because of the way I talk. And that's because they speak with a marked speech variety. You sound like you aren't from around here. You speak with an accent. So the point is not the way you're talking. There's nothing wrong with the way you're talking. What's different is your context. Remember, the people around you speak differently from how you do, and so as a result, you have a marked speech variety. Your speech variety is marked. Your speech is marked as being from an outsider instead of unmarked. You pass as an insider. Even if you aren't an insider, sometimes people are just really really good at shifting the way they speak, and so they can talk like they're from around here and get out of being a visible minority. So yeah, we distinguish. We use marked and unmarked in anthropology to distinguish things that are ordinary, normal, or everyday. That is unmarked from things that are unusual, strange, or out of place, and this is marked basically. Cultural models, metaphors, and figures of speech that we naturalize through their common use. Temperature and temper. We say, "Oh man, it was really hot yesterday in there. It got a little heated, right?" What does it have to do with high temperature and anger? Or man, he was really cool, right? Cool as a cucumber. And what is it? What does having uh, uh, a stable temper have to do with coolness? Nothing, right? It's just a metaphor that we use. Warfare and health. A lot of times when we talk about our immune system, we say, oh, this is the defense system. If we talk about the white blood cells, oh, those are like the commandos of the bloodstream. And we talk about, various antibodies as being killers. They kill the virus. It's all using a metaphor of warfare and violence to talk about the health of your body. And so it's important to remember that, yes, it's effective to use metaphors of violence and warfare because we understand that, but we only understand it because we're a violent, warlike nation. In other countries where people aren't so used to, using guns to solve problems, maybe these warlike metaphors are seen as inappropriate. Gendered speech, sometimes we hear, especially women, marked rising inflection marked as feminine. People say, "I know, right?" Which is sort of a passive aggressive way of sort of seeking support for your firm declaration right after you make it. I know, right? I was thinking maybe we should do something different. I was thinking maybe we should do something different, right? It's a different. When you have that rising intonation, it makes it sound like you're questioning everything. So this can come across as tone policing if people point it out, or mansplaining, which is what I'm always doing. It's usually professor-splaining, but since I'm male, it comes out as mansplaining. It's important to remember that gender is inflected in everything we do and say, even though we're not a gendered inflected language for the most part, except with pronouns he and she. We do gender the pronouns, but many languages don't. But apart from that, we don't gender nouns and verbs. But our gender is still really common. Speech communities, shared ways, shared features of ways of speaking. When we talk like someone from another, from our own community, then that is we belong to the same speech community, not necessarily just speaking the same language. It's more direct than that. Code switching is changing from one speech variety or a language to another from one sentence to the next. It's not just dropping in comprende at the end of a sentence. It's actually being able to switch from one language to another. And here is, whoops, see what I do while the thing uploads. Here is a video of a little boy who is, his mother's Indonesian, his father is French, and he's going to an English school, and he speaks all languages. He seems to be about 4 years old. Not school, then he's going to a English-speaking daycare, or his nanny is English or something, because he has really good English too. So he's going to code switch for us here.
Yang rusak, Jo? This one. That one. Kenapa? Oh, celananya bolong. Kok bisa bolong? Aku udah tahu kenapa bolong. Kenapa bolong? Kenapa papa bolong?
Fix it then. Tiens, tu prépares?
Je peux pas.
Comment ça, tu ne peux pas?
There's no more there.
Tiens, c'est pour toi.
Kalau gitu celananya mau diapain, Jo? Dibuang? After we don't poubelle. Mau taruh di tempat sampah? No, belum taruh tempat sampah.
Ou alors on laisse Louise le réparer. Tiens, Louise va enfiler le pantalon. Tu lui tiens le pantalon, elle va l'enfiler.
Bisa nggak dipakai sama Louis, Jojo? Bisa? C'est bien, Louis.
C'est bien, hein? Voilà, maintenant tu as un petit frère.
Louis?
Ouais. Maintenant, Louis est ton petit frère.
Buat mama ya, Jo, celananya? Tidak, sekarang buat Louis. Buat Louis? Nggak boleh buat mama? Tidak, nanti.
Voilà.
Maybe just tomorrow. Oh, voilà. Besok aja buat mama. Maybe tomorrow. Okay. Voilà, Louis.
Louis doit refermer ça.
Okay, so you could see in there, he switches very competently between English, French, and Indonesian with no problems at all. And kids are like that. Kids are amazing. We have a function of our brain that lets us learn language as children. Prior to the age of maybe 10 years old, maybe 12, 13, definitely before puberty, you learn language in a much different way than if you learn language afterwards. So afterwards, you learn language in an adult manner, memorizing words and formulating sentences using a different part of the brain than you do when you're little. When you're 4 or 5 years old, you hear it and you repeat it, and it just comes out perfect. And that's why people speak with accents, is because if they don't, if the mom speaks to him only in Indonesian and he speaks Indonesian with his mom, and the dad speaks to him only in French and he speaks only French with his dad, and then the teachers speak with him in English, he reproduces all of those sounds perfectly, and so when he goes back to his Indonesian grandparents, he can speak to them in completely unaccented or perfectly accented, unmarked accent in Indonesian, and French with his French grandparents. And when he's in London, he sounds like he's from London. And we know it's English, right, and not American, British English and not American English, because of his pronunciation of tomorrow, right? He didn't say tomorrow, he said tomorrow, right? Tomorrow. He said it in an English fashion. So we can see that this is completely understandable, that kids can learn these languages, multiple languages at once, and then code switch between them. And in some contexts, like in Morocco, where I did my field work, Arabic and French are spoken by in some cities. In some cities in Rabat or in Casablanca or Fez, you can start the sentence in English and started in French and ended up in Arabic, back and forth, really easily. This code switching is very common. Not in other in other parts of the world though, but in some of these parts of the world where you have French and Arabic education, such as in North Africa, in Tunisia and Algeria, it's very similar. People code switch a lot. But you can also code switch yourself when you changed, when the grandma walked into the room and you started speaking in a different register, from vulgar speech to more refined speech. You were code switching. So that's the same sort of thing. Let's stop it here and pick it up the next time.